Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Evolving Practice Podcast. I'm Dr. Sean Carey, and I'm with
Dr. Bill Moss.
And we're so excited because we have a special guest today. We have Miss Olivia Carli, who's joining us from Toronto, Canada.
Hello, hello.
And Olivia is somebody that I've known for about 8 years now, I think. So Olivia works at the Modern Mystery School, where both Bill and I studied, and we've studied for a long time. And she actually works at the bookstore there, helping out during programs. So I've gone to see her many times. And the reason that we really want to bring her into this interview today, she has many different gifts, but Olivia is somebody who's truly walked a path of transformation. And I've gone to see you for 8 years and just watched you incredibly shift into such amazing goodness in so many aspects of your life. So I know how hard it is to really walk a path like that and really do the inner work. So I'd love to hear more of your story. Like, what inspired this incredible transformation? What's the driving force behind it, and what have you learned along the way?
Good question. Hello. Firstly, thank you for having me. Super excited to come and chat with you guys. What inspired this work and the transformation? Great question. What I would say is, a long time ago, I was always a seeker and someone who always wanted to understand why we were here. I think since I was a little kid, it was like life. I wanted to always understand the meaning of life. Mm-hmm. I found myself as a child more interested in hanging out with my teachers at school on lunch because I wanted to talk to the adults and ask them questions about life. I always found it more interesting being around a table with my parents and their friends as they communicated at a gathering instead of playing with the children. And I think I was just always super fascinated and interested by what life is about and how people function and why they do what they do and why they choose what they choose. And, as time went on and I got older, of course, in all that depth, I desired deep experiences. Mm-hmm. And so that led me down some fun, challenging, and exciting roads. As I was younger in high school, it got me involved in like a lot of drugs and a lot of partying and kind of living on the edge in that way and experiencing what I knew as the depths of my consciousness at that point in time.
Yeah.
Right. And it was definitely a guise for having these big questions, but not having big answers and not knowing where to go. And I think in the deep wondering, and maybe a lot of people who have this wonder can also have this deep longing and sometimes struggle with, I struggled with a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety because I wanted answers and I didn't know how to find them. And so mixing all of that together really led to some challenging things. I put myself in some challenging situations, and my way out, quote unquote, was I ended up really enjoying things like travel. I really enjoyed kind of getting out of my day-to-day life and seeking adventure in that way. And when I started traveling at a young age, I started to realize that this deep spiritual connection came in. And it was like, as soon as I left the daily mundane everyday life, I opened myself up to this like magic guidance. And it kind of alleviated a lot of the stressors that I had in life. I kind of was able to leave the day-to-day that kind of didn't excite me. And I tapped into a magic flow. And after multiple trips, I went on one that didn't turn out so well and didn't fill me up quite the way the rest of them did. And it led me back to my life thinking like, okay, if this didn't fill me up now, like the thing that's always worked wasn't working. And that's when I started kind of seeking like magic. That's when I kind of started seeking, how do I sustain and bring this connectedness in at all times? And sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm curious, was it a place that when you were traveling, I always look at, I don't know if you do this now, but whenever I travel in an area, I always like envision like, could I do my work here? And I felt like when I was at a younger age, whenever I'd go to a place, I'd just like picture what my life would be like here, almost like that word,
Mm,
like that sense of wonder. And I'm wondering if it was a place that kind of like triggered this for you, or the returning from the place into kind of the place you were living that cultivated that experience for you.
yeah. So actually, it was I went to Europe and I loved Europe and was like, oh, I could live here. And really how I wanted to design my life was so I could travel and so I could build my career. I was a hairstylist and I was quite successful and I still loved it.
Mm.
But I actually did go to Thailand, and it wasn't so much of a place of inspiration, but it was actually a trip where a lot of things kept going wrong, to say the least.
Okay.
And I kind of felt like, I don't know if you've had this experience, but you've had a chain of series of unfortunate events, and they continue to get worse and worse. And when I used to travel, I used to have a chain of positive events, but this trip, it was more negative, and it was almost like veils were lifted, and I started questioning life. I was like, okay, like if this bad stuff happens, like maybe not all people are good. If this happened, maybe. So it actually kind of aired on more of the less positive side. Like it was like the challenging situation, the troubling situation, the rose-colored glasses for life and adventure kind of lifted off. And I just began to see a lot of suffering. I saw a lot of suffering in the world. I started questioning why I was doing what I was doing at a deeper level, because it was kind of like I could be a hairstylist and I could travel, and my passion was there, and the travel brought spiritual connection, and it was a good salad for a while. It really made it well and it worked. But then as soon as that travel didn't fill me up anymore, I realized, okay, something's really missing, and now my work's no longer fulfilling me either, because they kind of leaned on each other in a way. Yeah.
It's really interesting. We have this way that we can really want to explore like externally, and it's like whether it's like drugs and alcohol and partying, or whether it's travel, and you do kind of reach a limit at a certain point where you're like, oh, I'm not finding any new answers. I'm not finding any new experiences that are filling me up.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things is that was exactly it, is like a lot of it was this external seeking of God, or the proof of God, or the proof of an experience of something more. And I was always seeking like this high, this excitement, this meaning outside of myself. And I think it was quite a moment when the way in which I received that connection no longer came. But it was funny because that exact experience when I came back actually led to a very deep internal time and a deep internal reflection that got me on the path that I'm on now. And so I don't know could I say that if I look back without those deep external experiences, would I have swung back to the internal? Sometimes it's that polarization of deeply going outside of the self to try to achieve and call something in. That brought me deeply inside. I'm not quite sure, right?
Yeah. What about how old? I'm just curious, like how many years ago was this when you started the traveling, or when you really started to feel this like inward pendulum that brought you inside after having those like kind of more grandiose external like seeking? Because I think that's why we get drawn to travel a lot. I had a very similar years ago where I was just all over the place, and you find these little glimmers and aspects of stuff. But if that's all it is, and we don't take the inner journey, it's hard. So when was that in your life?
Yeah, so I started traveling quite young. Like I think I did my first Euro trip when I was 18.
Cool.
And the final trip I was 21. So it was kind of within that little chunk of time where I was doing a lot of travel. I started my career young in hairstyling. I started everything at a young age. Like I was partying and tattooing my body at a young age. I just was like, I want my life to be a movie. I want to experience it all. Yeah. But there was also this lining constantly through that time, through my life, childhood, teen years, young adult, of as much as there was this external pull, that internal spiritual connection was actually always there, and always something that was guiding me, that I was trying to seek, how can I pull this out more? And the only way I was able to really pull it out was in those experiences. So I didn't know another way. I knew there must have been another way, but I didn't quite know how to get there.
Now, do you feel like, so I know you were a hairstylist, and that's a very service related industry. And in my experience with chiropractic and also with the healing works, it's like, I feel like when people hit a service profession early on, there are these aspects that, you were close, right? And you were close to, the service aspect of like, I want to help another person. Did you find that in your journey into the healing work?
Oh yeah, most definitely. My goal as a hairstylist was, I loved making people feel beautiful. I loved being able to play with my hands, but my goal was transformation. My goal was bringing someone into my chair and having a deep conversation that would shift the way they thought about life, the way they thought about themselves, the goals they had, what they desired to seek. And so I'd sit in my chair day in and day out, and I was seeking transformation and helping others transform. And what I found is, even though they were going through this external transformation and we had deep conversations, they'd leave inspired, and maybe they would make changes in their life, but it just wasn't sticking in the way that I really wanted to have an impact. And I think that's where, when I started asking myself those questions, it's like, I love what I do and it fulfills me. And I think I'm bringing beauty and I think I'm helping. But there has to be a way I can help in a deeper way. There has to be a way that I can help people transform. And it was when I was in this really deep contemplation phase, I was looking at the world and like the pain and the sorrow, and seeing like the environment, like, you can look outside at the world and there's war and the environment's going, downhill, and there's all these things to fear. And, there's children who are sick and starving in countries, and we're killing the animals. So you got to be vegan. And like, there's just always this stuff telling us that everything we're doing is wrong. And I was like, okay, if I want to help, like, how do I help? Like, what is the actual issue here? Because I'm racking my brain about what's the best way to do it. And I had heard an Albert Einstein quote one day that really hit something in me. And it said, you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, I remember hearing that and realizing, like, oh, this isn't about solving the problems. This is about shifting consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, oh, I think what I need to do is seek, how can I help shift consciousness? And that's kind of what led me on my journey of seeking to do the work that I do now.
And then what was your introduction to like meeting your mentors, or, how'd you go from there to where you are now? Like, what was the first big step?
Yeah. I think one day I was definitely in that depth kind of space. As much as I was contemplating and questioning, it also maybe had a little bit of a negative air to it, it was more of in a depressive kind of state, like really questioning life and if I wanted to be here. And like suicidal ideation was definitely something that I dealt with. And one day I actually woke up one morning and I hadn't been able to work for a little bit because I was just really struggling with my mental health. And I said out loud, if I don't figure out what I'm here to do, I'm going to kill myself today. And I know that's a really heavy thing to say, especially, I hope that's okay to say here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was one of those things I said out loud. And, I always had quite a spiritual connection with my guides, and in the deep emotional place, I actually was completely cut off. And so it was kind of like a call out in a way. And when I did say that, something shifted. And it is like, for sure have both had a spiritual experience where there's just like bliss and comfort, and there is something divine that comes and just supports you and brings you peace and calm. And for me in that moment, feeling disconnected for so long, it was like a complete calm came over me. Like I was completely shrouded in like love. And I look back and it's kind of like, it was like, oh, okay, like you asked for, like almost like, oh, you asked for help.
Yeah.
And in that moment of clarity and calm and peace, I just like heard or felt or thought, Olivia, you're supposed to be a healer. And so what I actually did in that moment, it was like such a 180, because I was like, I'm ready to end this if I don't know what I'm going to do. And 30 seconds later, it's like, this is what you're supposed to do. And a minute later, I'm on the computer. I'm like, okay, fine. And I jumped on my computer and was like, I'll go anywhere in the world. I will make whatever happen. Like, I'll put it all on my Visa card. I'll go wherever I need to go. I'll train for years. But if I'm going to end it, what do I have to lose right now if I go and do this thing? Like, I obviously just got a really clear message. And as I was doing that, I had all these tabs open, like, oh, do I want to be a Jungian analyst? Do I want to be a herbalist? Do I want to go to a yoga retreat? Do I want to go to a temple in Japan? Like, and I opened up the mystery school website. And it was not like the most visually appealing website in the world.
Yeah. Is that why you still don't have a website?
Yeah, right? You're supposed to say that out loud.
That's why you're working on the most amazing website.
I'm working on the most amazing website. But it started talking about like astral travel and sacred geometry. And those were things that I'd been kind of like watching on YouTube. Like, I don't know if you guys ever checked out Spirit Science, but that was kind of like my gateway drug. And so I was like super excited, and I saw sacred geometry and astral travel. And then it said lineage of King Solomon. And there was one point where I had gotten a reading kind of done with someone months earlier, and they mentioned the lineage of King Solomon. And so for me, I was like, oh, like, ding, 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 ding. So I was like, okay, this is the place. And I remember when I read Lineage of King Solomon, it was like a coliseum of like cheering, like, yes, yes. But I'm in my bedroom by myself, like a Saturday morning. You know?
Was this like your spirit guides cheering, or you're just like so pumped
like
that it was a
stadium?
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot around you. So
and then I go to the schedule. I go to see where in the world it is, because I'm like, okay, where do I have to go and train? And this place is 15 minutes from where I'm living. Like the
funny, man.
The world headquarters. And I was like, no way. So I went to the schedule, and I was like, okay, calendar, like what's happening? And that day a program called Warriors of Light had started. And you both know what Warriors of Light is.
Yeah.
But I, 10 years ago had never heard this phrase before, except in my deep depressive time, I wanted to be connected. So the way in which I would do that is I'd like take psychedelic drugs and it would connect me. But every time I would take them, I would get this message that I was a warrior of light, and everyone looked at me like I was crazy. Like, yeah, Olivia, like whatever. And so when I saw Warriors of Light starting that day, I obviously had to be there. So I like called right away and was like, I know someone picks up, and I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be there. And really, it's like, I needed to go to kindergarten, but I was trying to get into university when I called. Yeah. And the person on the other line's like, it doesn't really work like that. But lo and behold, my first mentor and guide, Kathleen Lanyon, was like on the other line, and she was gracious enough to book an appointment for me to come in.
Well, let's slow this one down.
And she at first said, could I call you back? And then 5 minutes later called me back and said, let's just book an appointment. She knew I like needed it, because I was there twiddling my thumbs like, what am I supposed to do now? I figured out what I'm supposed to do with my life. And when I met her, I was like, I'm supposed to be like a healer. Like, let me sign up to be a healer. And she's like, well, do you want to try it all first? I'm like, no, I just know I'm supposed to do this.
I love that.
And I think she was like, okay, to this day, I welcome people into this path. I've never met someone who's said that or done that or operated like
Yeah.
that.
No,
Yeah.
I was like the total opposite. I was like, who's gonna want to ever do this stuff with me? I'm like, I have this. I'm gonna do a life activation. Nobody's gonna do a life activation with me. I have no desire to do this. What the heck? I'm not
Yeah.
gonna be a guy. Like, I was the total. I walked every step. Like, there's no way I'm doing this. And there you are on day one. Like, what's the thing at the highest order? Can I please play?
I signed up for Healers Academy that day. Like, I
Oh,
never even got a
amazing.
life activation. But I think it's, again, like,
Yeah.
I was definitely just a person of extremity. And like,
Yeah,
that's been a huge gift when it comes to diving into healing and like being willing to do the hard things. Like, Sean,
Yeah.
you started this by talking about transformation. And I think like you have to really dive headfirst into healing and into going into like uncomfy things. And I think the greatest transformation comes when we're willing to leap. And I think the extremity that I operated before really served me in this way.
Yeah.
But then it's also been that thing that as I do grow and evolve, the stabilization of the extremity and coming into middle pillar has been such a dance because it serves in leaping for transformation. But then, then it's like learning how to slow down and stabilize and like really integrate all that is happening so that that wisdom can come in and that true understanding can come in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a bit similar for me too. When I started doing this work, there was a part of me that just like that understood what it was on a soul level. And I just like, I started doing these sessions with Jordan and who's my guide, and started taking all these classes. And every time my life was shifting, and it was just so much good things were happening that I was just like, I'm going to keep doing more of it. And I just never really slowed down with it. And it was something that at times I probably pushed it too much, but it was also something that I think really served me too. Because it's like when you have that desire to change, you're like, I know my life can be better than the way it is right now.
Yeah.
Like, what a motivating force.
Yeah.
And thank you for being so open with your backstory, because I think a lot of people who are healers, like, they've really struggled. Like, people don't typically get to that point where I want to help somebody heal on a spiritual or soul level if they haven't had some major challenges in their life. Usually it takes a certain amount of suffering to have that motivation.
And the thing I love that you said is, because I'm kind of an extreme, intense person that looks back and says, that's part of my gift too. But I used it back in the day in this way that was maybe destructive or not just destructive, but also just impulsive, right? So it was like, it could be used to go in the right direction, and it could also be used to like kind of destroy the moment. Yeah. And I think sometimes we view healing like as an all or nothing thing, where like, I'm going to get rid of the complete old aspect of myself instead of like, transforming or refining those characteristics that make up who you are to now bring forward in a new way. And it seems like that's kind of what you've been doing over time. Can you talk even more about that? Because I kind of love that concept.
Yeah, I think when it comes to healing, we're always going to end up getting pushed into the thing that is almost our uncomfortable zone. Mm-hmm. And so if you are uncomfortable with the diving and in the extremity, then the medicine's going to be in the stillness. The medicine's going to be in the consistency and the stability, right? Like, I think that's just kind of a bit of universal principle at play. But I think what I really love about the path is it's a very supportive and graceful way to move in the right direction and to unfold and to unwind and to leap. But have the confidence to know that even if you're leaping and even if at points it's blind, you have a level of support that's super backed, that you're not doing it without anything. So that's the beauty of a path, right? Like, okay, I'm going to leap and I'm going to have to leave an old life for a new life. And when I leap, there's going to be all of this open space and there's going to be no ground beneath me for a bit. But I'm not just doing it randomly. I'm not doing it without direction. I'm not doing it without cause, and I'm not doing it without support and with like out thousands of people who have also done this similar leap in their own way. And so with the path, it became this really stabilizing force in my life that I could use my adventurous energy, or the fire that can create or destroy, in a way that was, yes, going to progress me, yes, going to help me peel away back all the impurities that really weren't me, and like work through, probably some of the things that needed to be refined and cleaned up. But I also knew that if I kept moving in that direction, it was inevitable that things were going to get better. And they always did, because it was a better direction. But I think sometimes too, when we heal, there's a level of surrender that's necessary that we can sometimes be afraid of. And there can kind of be such an unmasking that happens. Like you were kind of talking about, there's like this pull away of everything that sometimes you almost feel naked for a little bit. And I think anyone who's done any level of like true and deep healing, it's like you're healing and improving yourself, I hope in terms so that you can understand yourself more, so you can serve in the world. So it's not just self-serving, it's for this bigger picture of becoming and creating what you know you're supposed to create in the world. But secondly, it's like you have to peel away so much of what you think is you, that there is inevitably a period where you are completely naked and like you're like a blank piece of paper, and you wonder who you are anymore. And it's like, okay, well, there was these ways that I coped or lived life, extreme, adventurous, like on the edge, wanting to serve, that were all aspects that are actually really who I am, but the way in which they were being expressed in my life were distorted because some things in myself needed to be purified. But in that purification process, it's almost like if you were, imagine like you had a clock or a gear system that was like, had all this grease in it that it was no longer able to tell you the time because the gears couldn't work. You almost have to pick out every gear and clean it off and get all the oil and get all the buildup off and then rebuild it. But then at some points it feels like, okay, this isn't even a clock anymore. Like, is this ever going to function again? And the pieces of yourself, it's like the adventurous side of me is true, but it had to be picked apart and really looked at. And is it true, or was it a vice, or is it a virtuous aspect of me? And I think without a container to do that in, or without a path, I think that's where we can get lost sometimes. And the clock does actually end up being kind of picked apart, but never put back together.
That's great. It's a really good picture. It's a really good picture because, I mean, I can speak to just working with many different people who are healing in multiple capacities. It's like you can almost witness that unpacking of the gears. And a lot of people spend their time, like you said, kind of going from thing to thing to place, and maybe like, no, it's this part. No, that's not one. Okay, no, it's this part. That's the one. And then they're just running around with all the pieces, but it's like, no, it's all those. We need to bring them back together. And you're totally nailed that. Like, that's what a path does, is it provides this almost like bumpers on a bowling alley to like give you a little nudge back in, like, until you can roll a little bit straighter or with a little more curve and risk. I think you really nailed that with the gear analogy.
Yeah, and I've never used that one before, so that just came through just for this interview.
Thank you for that.
And there can be such a big difference between having a focus on healing and actually going forward too, because sometimes you can see where it's with people, they're almost they're working on the same thing and maybe for 10 years, but it's like getting obsessed with the emotion about the thing and replaying the story over and over, but it doesn't necessarily help them to move forward past what that thing is. And it's like understandable when you've gone through difficult traumas or challenges in life isn't always fair. And you see that maybe life isn't always, pure good. And there's some darkness and chaos, and it can really affect somebody in a negative way. But so often people, I think, just get so hyper focused on what that is, and they don't have that container that's actually pushing them forward.
Yeah.
And one thing I just want to clarify here is that when we talk about the path within the mystery school lineage, what we're the three of us are talking about right now is this system of spiritual activations, initiations that really raises the energetic frequency of somebody so that they move forward into a higher spiritual frequency of who they really are. So like your divine self, higher levels of your divinity. And we equate that with going forward, because what you're going forward into is really your god or goddess self, like your true self. It's not so covered by the human suffering, the human thought processes, these human emotions that can just really weigh us down and create distortions in the life we could have.
Yeah. And I think one of the beautiful things, if I might add, is like healing is a big thing in the world today. But I think when we look at healing, it's like so easy to look at all that's wrong. And we can get so fixated on all the things that are wrong, and negative and bad. But there also has to be this place where we're like looking towards the light and looking towards all that is also right.
100%.
And I think as much as it's good to look at all that's right within our life, there's like a common theme I've seen within myself and within like all the people that I work with that has proven time and time again to be wildly supportive in accelerating someone's healing journey. And that is the aspect of service and the aspect of the willingness to heal because it's not about you. And I think we've all been through horrible things, some people worse than others. Sometimes we really are victims to circumstances in life. Okay. No matter what, though, when we realize that we have a mission, a purpose, a meaning that like goes far beyond just ourselves and our lives and even just our immediate lives around us, we move through things so much quicker.
So much.
When it's not about us, when it's not about me, when our focus turns inward to reflect, but outward to serve, and let us share light, goodness, and whatever our unique gift is with the world, I find that people just move through their stuff way faster. Like it's like, and I, Bill, I'm sure you're a father. You see that even with the dot, like it's like, I got my daughter. I'm gonna move through things for her.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, that's like this this ultimate level of service where you are almost like, because especially when they're really young, right? Like I had this reflection when my daughter was like 0 to 6 months, where it's not like you're teaching them anything, right? So then you're just modeling. Their whole life is just like being in your energy and being influenced by your energy. So then I'm like, well, how important is it, that I take care of myself just in a whole way. And I saw that from myself and my wife and how this has helped her development, because really the first 7 years, like they're so close to the light and like we're so close to the light. And I think we do forget how important modeling is for other people. So it's like one of the impact natures of all the things that you went for is like this modeling that you can show somebody what that outcome can be, right? Serve as that archetype that can actually be a point of light for people to draw towards, right? Instead of just like, where's my community to wallow in our self-pity?
Yes.
And I think that's why your story is so impactful and helpful for many people, is because like that's what we become when we overcome our problems.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big things is like, what a beautiful thing if you are struggling and if you are having a hard time, whether it's mental, emotional, spiritual health that you're struggling with, like at whatever level it's affecting you, physical, and you can't get by. It's like wherever your greatest weakness is and whatever is manifesting in your life, whether like the distortions I had of these extremities that were just maybe shadows of what are really me. It's like, that's also where your gift lies. That's also where your medicine is. So I kind of always tell people, it's like what you've been through is like sometimes the very thing that's going to give you the gas to fulfill what you came here to fulfill. So it literally is like this reflection back that, can we actually ever be victims Or is it like what we do with what happened? Now, if we keep perpetuating pain and suffering, okay, then there's really something we need to look at within ourselves, that we keep recreating horrible loops and situations in our lives, because for sure the universe and life is constantly giving us opportunities to grow. But your pain, what you've gone through, your experiences, they're your medicine book. They're your medicine and your handbook. And if you properly learn how to work with them and heal so you can really move forward in your life, that's medicine for the world too.
So good.
And it's so amazing to work with clients too. And I know you are really active in your service. You help a ton of people. And it's like every time you have a client who has a big breakthrough, to me, it really feels like there's a shift in the world. Like you help the world release this issue, this aspect of suffering of the human collective. Because there was some brave soul that was ready to do the work. And then here we are in this amazing position where we get to help them.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, like for any of us who desire to want to help the world, I think we can all probably agree it happens one individual at a time.
Yeah. It's almost, we started in the chiropractic profession, and it's almost like there was a mantra in the profession, like one spine at a time kind of deal. But like, it's that simple, but yet that's kind of how it begins. And I always like to think of, when I'm assessing like how I'm doing, sometimes it's so easy to look out in the world and be like, oh my gosh, we can't make an impact. But it's like, how impactful am I in my close circle with my family and with the clients I'm serving? And like, life's pretty good right there. We're closer to peace than we're led to believe when we look in this closer way at the immediate relationships to ourselves. And when that becomes different, I always feel more hopeful, like you said, like that we can. Because if we think of the totality of like the state of the world, I always find myself being like, oh my gosh, why am I even doing this? And then having a conversation with you today, I'm like refreshed to be like, oh yeah, look at all these aspects of this process that make the world better. So, yeah,
it's the microcosm and the macrocosm. Like, I think a lot of people on a lot of levels can look at the world and see it's chaotic, but then they look at their lives and it's chaotic too. So it's like they have nothing to compare it to. But when you've moved from chaos to creating peace and calm and joy and aligned success, it makes you realize that it truly is possible for anybody to create that. And so it's a matter of like showing up and letting people know what's available. And, now more than ever, of course, we're super aware of everything that's going on in the world, good, bad, beautiful, ugly. But there's also like more tools to help people understand themselves and get even front end understanding of the mind and the power that they can have to change their life. And, we're a lot of people, and we've all got this free will, and we all have to choose better. But I think if the ones that have tools to help start saying, I don't think we can do it, it's like, well, if we can't, then who else is going to do it? Right? Like, we can't wait for everyone else to start doing it either. And when you're working with clients, it's like, I've seen people who've had no money. I've seen people who have been abused. I've seen people I've seen people go from worst case scenarios and create best case scenarios. So when you constantly are being shown that, then you really do realize like this is about empowerment. And like the greatest empowerment is literally handing someone the fishing rod and saying, I'm going to teach you how to fish, and you're going to create a good life for yourself. And it's going to be filled with magic, and it's possible. And then it's like, okay, cool. Like there's a lot of suffering happening, but like it's super, super possible to create something better for yourself. You just have to ask, are you willing to be honest with yourself, and are you willing to do the work necessary?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I love that.
It's really good. Yeah.
Olivia, do you have any favorite like client stories that you might be able to share? Or maybe there's a lesson or two that you've really learned on the healing journey that you'd like to share? Yeah.
Okay. So client journeys, it's like, I feel like my head just like scanning through right now. I think there's so many, I can't even think of something precise in this moment. But did you say if I could think of common themes or common things? Yeah, I can share more common themes because, you know, there's some remarkable and big things that I've watched clients create.
Yeah.
But time and time again, I don't think it's ever about the big things.
Great.
I think it's about the micro things and the little things that add up to something big. And I think coming from an ex-extremist.
We're so similar. It's wild. I was even thinking about this concept before the podcast. I was like, maybe we should ask her this question. I was like, gosh, I don't know. What are my big stories? They're all little things, but mine's so extreme. And, you know, I had this exact same experience before we even jumped on here.
Yeah.
And from an ex-extremist, like what I've noticed time and time again is when we start this journey, anyone, whether you're someone who's like there is a reason you as a human being are seeking for more, are seeking deeper meaning, are asking yourself why you're here. And I think we're always looking for this grandiose aha, like kind of like the aha that I shared. You know, I have a very animated and alive story. And the reality is that's just not how it always looks. And that's how it looked for a moment in time. And it's 10 years. And the biggest moments have been in like built in brick by brick by brick. And I think we look for these extreme moments to find God, and I think to find meaning, and I think to be reminded of what matters. And it's more in building your life brick by brick. It's more in what you do daily. And then I think when you show up for yourself and do the things that support you to build a better life, to build a better vibration that sometimes even seem mundane, it's sometimes in those mundane things that are all actually building you like a kingdom of magic. And so I think time and time again, one of the biggest things I've seen on the healing journey is letting go of the desire for something extreme and grandiose and being willing to be consistent and be committed to your path. And there isn't a single person that I haven't seen that is committed and consistent that hasn't bared like incredible fruits. But it doesn't happen overnight. And, you know, sometimes we get the overnight thing, but the overnight thing doesn't sustain itself. It doesn't anchor. It doesn't ground. Like, despite having the big fireworks show, it's like, who are you the next morning? And so I think that's like one of the biggest keys that I've noticed in healing is like, find a system that works, but you have to be consistent and committed to your growth, and you're going to create something truly amazing. And also, it's like absolutely necessary. And I've seen it time and time again. Like, you're not going to get to your new life. You're not going to get to where you want to go if you're not willing to let go of the old. And if you're not willing to let go of aspects of yourself, aspects of your life, aspects of your way of thinking. And I think sometimes we think that we can just add on. We're like, I'm going to heal and I'm just going to bring in more practices. I'm going to bring in more good. I'm going to just add. And it's like, you can add all you want, but until you subtract, there won't be room. And you're like, we kind of say you can't pour from an empty cup, but you also can't fill a full cup. And so if you truly do want to heal and live a better life, like, you have to be willing to like get radically honest with yourself and change. And it's usually the thing you want to change least that you have to. So it's like my teacher, and he's your teachers as well. Sovereign Ipsissimus Dave Lanyon also often says sacrifice is the thing you're least willing to change, but is also gonna bring you the greatest transformation and get you closest to where you need to go. And I think I found that time and time again is like, I can support people and they want good in their life, but sometimes they have to let go of something they're really scared to let go of.
I feel like you just kind of summed up in a masterclass the last 5 minutes of like these high points of like the journey, right? Like the journey of healing from start to finish. Really great.
And going back to that first key for a minute that you shared about like the brick by brick piece, I think that it's just so motivating for people, or so hopeful for people, because somebody can be at like a point A and where they're wanting to go, point B is just it seems so far. There's such a big gap. And the person just be like, how do I get there? It seems so far away. But you can do little things better that will help get you there. Yeah, it's just like you can start putting down each brick, and it doesn't have to be such a big leap, and just focusing on those micro pieces that are really huge. Like with our client care, I mean, we can work on being just a little bit more present. We can do, doing this part of the report a little bit better, doing this aspect of communication a little bit better. Like all those, the touch on the shoulder, communicating the right energy when we do that. And those things matter. They have such a huge impact.
Yeah. And I think again, like most people believe that they're here for some sort of reason, and either they haven't let that go and like they've held onto that in their heart, or maybe they've let it get buried. But sometimes it can be so daunting to think like I have a purpose and I have a meaning and I have no idea where to begin.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just like we want to know what's at the top of the staircase. It's like I want to know what's there. I want to know what I'm supposed to do. But it's like you're never going to be shown what's at the top of the staircase until you just take the next step and the next step. And like the brick, it's the little step. The thing that you just have to be mindful of is make sure and do your best to go in the right direction. And like only you're going to know what that looks like. But like it's when we consistently step in the wrong direction in a way that's not serving us, that's not in alignment with something higher and better, that's when we're doing a disservice. That's when we're dismissing our soul and that like higher calling. But if you just keep taking little incremental steps towards being better, and like your desire and your aim is the sun, the North Star, your meaning, you're going to eventually get all the pieces you need to get there. But wanting all the pieces before you've even started, like nobody gets that.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Nobody gets that, right? Like it's like there's things you have to understand along the way. And like if you knew, and if you were given all of that today, would you have the capacity to hold it all? It's like, no. That's like being like, you can carry 10,000 pounds. And then they give you 10,000 pounds and it's like, oh, actually, like I don't have the physique and the strength and the endurance and the training to do that. So yes, I can carry 10,000 pounds, but guess what? I'm going to do it step by step by step and build myself physically with my diet and with my exercise so that I can get there. And so if we just think of every step towards our destiny as being meaningful and purposeful, you just start to enjoy the journey. But it's like, what we have to be mindful of, and like people might get triggered, is like, are you going in the wrong direction? That's where you have to be radically on. Like, what are you doing with your time? Where you got time, money, and you got energy, where are you investing them? Because if they're not actually in alignment with seeking to understand who you are and why you're here, then I can guarantee you're suffering.
And even when you're taking those small steps, like if you're going in the right direction, you'll feel good along the way. It's like when you're going in the wrong direction, even if you're taking big steps, it feels kind of empty.
Right. Yeah. Well, I love it. Like everything you said, I was like, oh, that's a good motivational talk for an athlete. Like if you took an amateur athlete and threw them in the pros, they'd very quickly figure out like, I'm not prepared. But if they're preparing for that, they will enjoy each step of the way because they're feeling like that call to grow into the next level and into the next step. And I think that's why we inherently are really drawn to like things of sport and athletics, because we love watching that story where somebody is like, I'm dirt poor, I have nothing, but you know what? I have some talent. And if I use that, I don't need a lot. I don't need money. And I grow into it. We love that story because it's a great example. It's like, we love it. We're like, that is such a good, that's my favorite athlete. Why is it your favorite athlete? Because they were given something, but they knew that they had to work for more.
And what if all of us are that?
Oh, we are. That is the key.
And Sean, you said something around when you're going in the right direction, it feels good. Okay. Can I refine that a little bit for those that might be going in the right direction and it doesn't feel good? there is a part of your soul that will be fulfilled when you're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And there's a part of your ego that will be absolutely uncomfortable and upset and angry and loud.
Yeah.
And so the lesson and your journey is to seek and understand the voice of your soul, so that when the voice of the ego comes in to keep you stuck and to get you uncomfortable and to rub against you, you're strong enough to follow the soul. Because it's kind of like the things that are going to be good for you, the ego is going to tweak out.
Yeah.
It wants to keep you stuck.
Yeah.
But that soul, man, that's that feeling good. There's like a deep fulfillment, a deep joy, a deep purpose, a deep alignment, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it is crunchy, because, you know, it gets crunchy. It doesn't always feel good, but there's always joy and there's always fulfillment.
I love your descriptors. So true. So true.
It is. And it's such an important distinction. Thank you for making that. We did an episode called The Voices in Our Head, and we spent really that whole episode talking about that voice of the negative ego and how it when we're really like we're about to have a big breakthrough where you know, there's a big shift, there's something that's really about to change or could change a good way based on the choices we make. Oftentimes that negative ego voice is so loud, and if you don't have that awareness of, you know, what's my soul, what's my heart, and you get stuck in that ego that's going on in the mind, it can really take you off track.
Yeah.
You can miss out on huge things.
Awesome.
It's the reason why people seek these external things.
Yeah.
The ego's like, this is what you want. This is what's going to fill you up. This is what you need. And with each achievement and each accomplishment and each thing, you feel emptier and emptier, or like you're quenched, but for a moment in time.
Yeah.
Yet the things of the soul, they really fulfill you in a different way.
That's good. Awesome, Olivia. It was kind of worth the wait, because what people don't know is we tried to do this a week ago, and nobody's mic worked, and there was all this interference. So we probably wouldn't have gotten as good of a story or as good of content for our listeners without the waiting, right? Because it teaches us persistence. How many lessons were in that alone?
Yeah.
Many. So awesome. It was really, really fantastic to have you here. I know I am coming away inspired and excited with your words and teachings on this podcast. And I look forward to, you know, take some of them and just like into the heart and to serve with them. So I appreciate you being with us, sharing your journey.
Thank you.
Sean, any final thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your magic with us, and I just love if you could share how people can find you and connect with you.
Yeah. So, as Dr. Bill Moss said earlier, my website's under construction.
I love it. I had to do it. It just felt right, Olivia.
It felt good in the soul. It felt good in the soul. So the best way to contact me is on social media. On my Instagram handle, I am Olivia Carli. And you can find all the way to contact with me and engage with me through there. So I am Olivia Carli.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. We look forward. We'll have you again, I'm sure, down the line. We'll get to see how far you've gone since. But thanks for being on the Evolving Practice podcast. And we hope that you as listeners enjoyed everything we had to share. Keep being awesome. Thank you.
Thank you
all so much.
Thank you.